What's up? Carlos here with Range Heaven Tactical. This video is a DIY trailer build, but I'm going into the weeds, right? We're getting very specific. I did another video about a year and a half, 2 years ago when I first built this trailer, and I've been getting a lot of emails and questions asking about specific measurements or components on the trailer build. So on this video, I literally brought my tape measure out, and I'm just gonna start measuring out some of the major components on this build. So if you're trying to make your own DIY trailer build and you like this one, you can kind of use some of those measurements as a starting guide for your build. Again, check out that other video for more of an overall kind of progression of the build. This one is literally going to be a technical build, technical spec video, right? So stay tuned.
Yeah, the other teams are moving in the background.
All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about how it's held up. Like I said, had this build for about 2 years, no issues whatsoever, right? The only thing, of course, you know, some of the paint got some dings from some of the camping trips. The only thing I've noticed is on this black kind of rhino liner, it is sitting on aluminum. I did prime it, but I have noticed that some of the like bumps on this diamond plate, you know, from walking and using the trailer, the paint has faded a little bit on some of those spots, but basically that's been about it. I mean, the trailer's held up perfectly good. There's a couple of spots where I've had to touch up a little bit on the paint, just on this black rhino lining. Everything else, you know, the paint job is still pristine. This thing literally sits out in the sun all day, and it holds up good. I do put a tarp over the rooftop tent when I'm not using it, and it's not because it's going to leak or anything, but it just protects some of these straps and some of this nylon webbing that's on there from fading and can get deteriorated. So I do put a tarp on that. This has been kind of the major upgrade, if you want to call it. So all I got to do to open this up, I take out the two pins, one in the front, one in the back. Once I got those two pins out, literally I just grab this thing and extend it up. That's as easy as that. Once I have that up, I use those same pins, kind of put it back at the base. Now it went from up top to the base. One in the front, one in the back as well. And now it is up and ready to go. Again, the benefit to this kind of hinge system, it's got a hinge at the bottom and then a hinge at the top, so it works kind of in conjunction. And now I still have access to my compartments. That's kind of been the major upgrade to that. It's super stable. This thing is not going over. Once it's extended and kind of anchored in, it's not going anywhere. And then when it's down, it's out of the way. So that's kind of been the major upgrade to actually the build. All right, so let's start kind of measuring some stuff out. So first and foremost, I'll give you the dimensions to the box. So the box is 48 inches wide. It's actually 48 and a half. I think that's because I'm adding some of the, you know, a 1/4 inch because of the angle iron up top. So about 48 inches wide, and it is 28 inches tall, right? So it's 48 inches wide by 28 inches tall, and then from front to rear, I'm at 77 3/4. So 77 3/4 from front to rear. So that's the overall dimensions. Talking about some of the other dimensions, if we want to talk about the rack, I have a gap of 7.5 inches, right? So from the base of the angle iron here to the top of the rack, it's 7.5 inches. And then of course the rack is 48 inches wide, and then it has three different posts, one in the front, one in the middle, one in the back to hold up the rooftop tent. It is a 4-person tent, and so I go up there. It's all four of us go up there. My wife and 2 kids. We all sleep up there, so it's got to be able to hold some weight. So that's kind of how I built that. All right. The trailer sits off the ground. Granted, I'm on uneven terrain, but about 18 inches from the bottom, from the floor to the bottom of kind of the step here. So that's about where it sits. There's not a lot of clearance on the tires, but I have not had a single issue with them rubbing, even on serious terrain. When it's fully loaded with water and food and I'm pulling it, I've never had that to rub, so no issues there. just kind of working my way down the fender here. So this first part here is 15 inches by 18 and a quarter by another 15. So 15, 18 and a quarter by 15. And then from the end of the bumper there to the first bend is 14 inches. And all the way out is 17 and a half inches. So that's kind of the measurements there. All right, so that's kind of the frame. Another thing, just to kind of give you some more specs here, this is 3 inches. So it's 3-inch. It is that hollow inside. So just keep that on weight. Instead of using like full steel enclosed, they're actually like a C Perline, I think they're called. So they're hollow on the inside. Also help with running some of the wiring through there, kind of tucking stuff out of the way, right? So that's kind of the frame and the general build. Let's talk about some of the components, right? So the main doors, they're all the same size. They are, this one is 23 and a quarter by 23 and a half. They're actually a little bit narrower they're a little bit taller. So 23 and a quarter by 23 and a half, so a little bit of a difference there. They are, what I used to build these is 3/4 inches, so it's 3/4 inch included. That's including the sheet metal on the outside. So I think if you were to pull these out, I think it's just 3/4 inch square tubing is what I used. And then the inside gap, of course, when I did build this, just for references, I actually built the gap first, and then I built the doors to match. So even though the general specs on these are pretty much the same, there is a little bit of variation between all doors because I wanted to line up perfectly on this, right? So the gap on the inside is actually 23 3/4 by 23 3/4. So it's actual gap there. You can see when I built the doors, I just built the outer frame, and then I got 2 cross beams holding onto it, and I had to put these little plates on there because when I riveted the locks on there, I didn't want to rivet it just to the sheet metal. So I put these extra little plates. I don't know if you can see those on the camera there, and that just gives it more rigidity for when I riveted the locks on there. The other major learning point on this is when I put the gaskets on these doors, I actually originally put them inside here. And I was getting water inside because it was just coming in through the door. So once I transferred it to the door, I basically looked at the vehicles. If you notice on your vehicles, the gaskets are on the door, not on the frame. So I just mimicked that, and that resolved the issue. 0 water comes in here. All right, moving along to kind of my kitchen area here. So obviously you've seen on my other video how I kind of got the layout. This is all wood. So once I built that compartment in there, I just built this little wood kind of compartment here, and it's on hinges. That's where my stove is, stuff like that. And this is actually bolted to the sheet metal that it sits on, and it's actually got a frame inside. So give you some dimensions on this door here. It is 46 and a half inches long by 11 and a half inches tall, right? So 11 and a half by 46, and of course the gap is going to be a little bit bigger than the measurements there. Back side there, so 47 by 11 and 3/4. So just slightly bigger. Again, if you're building, leave the doors to the end. Build out your compartment frames and where you want to do it. Again, I built out, all I did on this, I built the frame, and then I just took some angle iron and just welded that from the inside so that way the gasket would have something to sit on. And then there's a couple of places where I just had to add some silicone to keep the water out. So that's the basic layout for that. Again, on this one here, I actually had to add some additional support beams in here just to be able to put these locking mechanisms on there. So it's got one here, and it's got another one over here as well that I use to have somewhere for the rivets to attach to. Other than that, I basically just have these wires. I don't know if you can see them on the video there. These wires are what hold it up in place. Basically catches, and then once I go to close it, I just move it out of the way, and it closes, and then they latch just like that. I found these to be the best. I actually have locks that fit in all of these, so when it's at the house, it's got locks on every single one of these. When I go camping or take it off for a drive and stuff like that. I don't have the locks on there. I've never had an issue with one of these locks popping open. So really good locks there. Let's move over to the back. All right, so moving along to the back here again, just to kind of recap from before. So 48 inches wide by 27 3/4 inches tall. So talking about this back compartment here, right, the back door. The door gap, I'm measuring from the gap to gap, is 26.5 inches by 23.5. Again, when I built this, I built the compartment gap or the opening first, and then I built the door. This door, just like the other ones, it's got a couple of kind of support beams in it to give it some rigidity and also allow for some places to add some rivets to kind of hold it in place. And then again, the gasket on the door helped. In addition to that, a couple of extra things that I carry in here. I do carry some chalk blocks to kind of, once I disconnect it, and I do have a kind of those RV yellow Lego stacks, because when you go out there, you're gonna find there's never perfectly flat terrain, so those are great because I just put one or two under the wheel and kind of level it out. I also have a shovel that I take that's on my Tacoma. Sometimes I'll dig a little hole on one side just to drop a wheel and then kind of level the trailer out, because trust me, when you're cooking, you want everything flat because if not, water and everything starts running, and then even for sleeping, it just gives you a nice flat platform. All right, so those were the major components, come to the measurements on the build. So again, hopefully this information, in addition to the other video, kind of give you a better starting point on some of the overall kind of dimensions of the build. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email, leave a comment down below, and I will be more than willing to share that information with you if there's a specific component that I didn't talk about that you want to know some specs on. With that, appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to subscribe, as it truly does help. With that, stay safe and train hard.